Hi, my name is Ranjit Sagoo. I'm the founder of Brain Arts Limited. We provide educational services for young people aged from 3 right up to 18, but we also provide it for adults, and we work right across the board with a range of adults. There's no age limit there, and the main aim is to use art to support children and adults with learning, especially within their maths, their English and their science. So we're using academic subjects and we're using visuals through art to help them learn in a more engaged and more visual way, really. So I've been a teacher for 14 years nearly. My background started off as a graphic designer in the early 2000s. I graduated from the University of Westminster, and since then I became a teacher in 2008 and worked my way up in education. I was a head of faculty, I was a head of year, but more recently I went back to university to study my Masters in Arts and Education practice in Birmingham, and that's where the inspiration for Brain Art kind of really begun. So Brain Art began in 2019. The motivation behind it was when I did my MA in Art and Education. I graduated in 2019, and it was a month after that officially Brain Art Limited was established. And what we started to do there was provide services for children to use art as the fundamental method of delivering difficult concepts in those 3 subjects, in maths, whether it be in English, whether it be in science. And that's how the business grew from there, really. So in schools, they have the 3 models, the VAK or the VAC system, where you have the visual, the auditory and the kinesthetic learners. And obviously not every child learns in any one of those styles. Sometimes you might get children that learn in all 3. Some children only specialise in or very good at one, and art is very visual, but it's also very kinesthetic because you can be quite hands-on. So we found that the way Brain Art works is that we are very much visual, we are very kinesthetic. We do use the auditory in looking at something complicated, a complex method in maths, for example. Within algebra, we break it down, we look at the language, and then from there we'll start to turn into a visual from those words, really. But also the kinesthetic comes in when they actually do the activity, when they paint, when they draw, when they make a clay model. It all integrates well into that and methods of learning, really. So one of the reasons why we established Brain Art was because one of the articles I read in my Masters was by a man called Brent Wilson, and he wrote for a pedagogical site. Pedagogy is a word that is used in teaching. It's an alternative word for the learning of education. And it was an article that Brent Wilson had researched by going to a school. He was an American man. He came to the UK in the 70s. He went to an English school, and he found an art teacher who had 2 spaces in his classroom. The normal classroom where he had tables and chairs facing the front of the classroom, and on the other side of the room he almost created a living room with bookshelves, a little lamp with a nice cozy armchair, a lovely rug on the floor with some little coffee table. And that space was kind of reserved for kids that he got on with, who were very interested in the arts, and they would go there for their lunch and their clubs and their after school, and they just hang out and learn about art and read and just create. And interestingly, what Brent Wilson then did was he went and tracked those students down years later to find out what their careers were. The kids who were working in the kind of normal academic space in the normal classroom were, never really took up art as a career option, but the kids who were in that third pedagogical site, as he referred to, ended up going into a career of the arts and became really professional artists and pretty much dedicated their life to that. So the idea of the third pedagogical site is basically, it's not a classroom, it's not your home, it's another space for people to be creative. And what is that third space? What is that third site? And for me, that's why I've tried to make Brain Art become. A lot of children are trying to find their way in education now because they've been so disrupted over the last few years, where they've been working from home, they've been locked down. They're now trying to understand, what is their place in school. Well, what we've been kind of working towards is addressing those issues of fear of failure, because that's become a massive issue, not just since COVID, but before that. It's always been the case of, if I do this wrong, I will then feel that fear or that failure. And so therefore children won't try at all. They'd rather just not give it a go. There are children who are very resilient and very determined and will still work through that, and obviously they're successful kids as they go through school. But you also get the kids who are lacking confidence, and if they go wrong once, then it almost shatters their confidence. And what we're trying to do is address that balance by offering them another place to try things out. If I could really pinpoint what's effective about this, it's working through something and actually come up with some ideas and the creative process in that way. But also it's the confidence building. We know that once they start to realise that, maths isn't so hard if we try and do it more visually, or science is a little bit more engaging, or I like reading this book, I want to turn it into a drawing. These things are really effective in getting children to approach all their subjects in a more visual way. If you can get what's in your mind down on paper, it becomes a lot more real, and you can kind of walk away from it and come back to it, and you finally can realise, actually, that still stays in my memory. We found that algebra links a lot to romance. People are attracted to each other, people have to stay away from each other, and so a lot of our illustrations are about kind of using that romance kind of idea to link things and to separate things. Like terms is a great example of that, where you might end up drawing numbers and letters in groups and saying actually they don't get on with each other, like rival fractions, and they don't like each other, so therefore that's why they have to stay separate. And automatically you start to see how the maths works. BODMAS and BIDMAS, great easy one. B stands for bracket, so we created Bob the bracket. O would have been Ollie other, or Ian indices. You got the D, Dave division. So there's all sorts of weird and wonderful kind of characters that we created, and then right to the bottom was Sally subtraction. I remember one child had come up with that idea, and again we created characters from it. But also the fact it was subtraction, so they drew a subway. For example, it's these little kind of links to real world settings like reality. And again, using mnemonics to actually create those ideas helps them to then remember them a lot easier, and they know the order of it because they made these characters. And then we'll go one step further and we'll make a clay sculpture out of them. So all these clay sculptures, and they would be painted in different colours to then remind them of the order of things as well. So it's interesting, really, when you're born, you go to nursery, you go to early years, primary school, you're encouraged to grab a pen, paintbrush, make a mark. There's articles written about that from various leading experts. Ofsted have written about that. You've got so many things about how young children should be making a mark. So in terms of how do you teach innovation, it's not like a set way of doing it. It's not like one magic word and all of a sudden they're innovative. It's a process. It's about always trying to problem solve. It's always trying to come up with creative solutions to difficult challenges, and it's stretching the brain like an elastic band without kind of because you're exercising it by doing that. If you do things that you find easy, you'll always be stuck in first gear. By doing something that is going to stretch you and challenge you, you are going to be more innovative as you go further. And I mean, schools are coming up with so many different methods to help children do that. We're just supporting or complementing what schools are doing by running our workshops. So we're not here to compete with schools. We're never saying, we're the alternative to mainstream education. Far from it. We want to work with schools as well to support them in engaging their students in their learning that they're working on at the time. So it would be using creative methods and using that innovation to problem solve and develop their skills as they become older. Thank you very much. My name is Ranjit Sagoo of Brain Art Limited. Check us out at Brain Art UK. Thanks for your time, and I hope to see you guys soon.